I think the project's in a way been quite difficult because, not because of anything bad, but because the group have so many ideas and such massive ambitions and things that they want to do, that there was just 101 things that we could have ended up doing. And at one point the project seemed like it had just got so big that I felt like kind of like my head was going to explode with all the things that we needed to do. So we kind of pared it down and thought about what was realistic in the time that we had and with the money that we had. And I think we've come up with hopefully a project and a product and a film which people can kind of look at and think, yes, that's kind of things that I could think about or I could do within my life. And hopefully it's kind of made it clear that you can make things locally and you can source things locally, and through that the money and the pride, the sense of pride and all those things can stay in the community, and also through doing that you can contribute to not changing the climate and walking sort of gently on the earth as well.
If you're going to do something about climate change, do it now, because in 40 years' time, the world won't be as we know it now. It could be a lot different or just a little bit different. We're on a tipping point right now. This is the part where we can actually do something about it, but soon enough, if something's not done, we won't be able to do anything about it, and nature's just going to take its course.
Do you think we'll achieve everything that we've set out to do in the project?
After getting a grant from New Deal for Communities to help with climate change, Lower Keilsey Young People's Group are on a mission to make products which are made as much as possible in Salford. The group have sat down and decided that as they have an allotment and skills in cooking, they're going to make soup.
The project that we're doing, we're trying to make it like in Salford and more environment, so like less electricity.
And what do you think about that?
It like being more helpful because it's like to do with the planet and like less. It's like more greener, so like less thingy. Like the smoke's like going to the air and like less electricity.
Climate change is really important at the moment, and we want to make the soup environmentally friendly as well as make it in Salford, so it's like local as well. So that's why I really wanted to be part of this group.
Why do you want to be involved in the project? What do you think you'll get out of it?
Well, it'd be great to know what we can make in Salford and how we can make it in Salford.
The group are off to Offshoots in Burnley to see how other people grow food. Phil from Offshoots works on a site where they grow in a permaculture way. It's a kind of growing which allows us to go on growing forever without using up loads of the world's resources. This way of growing influences everything which Phil does on the site.
A lot of people think the term bodging means to do a bad job, but it isn't. It actually does mean, the correct name for a green woodworker is a bodger, and it's Norse. What do I mean by Norse?
Nose.
No, Norse. The word is from Norse.
Is it like an old type of person, like a Viking or something?
Yeah, it's an old Scandinavian dialect that the Vikings used. It's from Norway. Norse is the old dialect of it. It's Norse, and it's botcher or tree butcher is the correct term. And that's exactly what they do. Like a butcher would butcher a beast, a lamb or a cow or a pig. They do exactly the same with a tree. They cut the component parts out of it to make different things, and they make the most amazing furniture from very simple tools that they can take into the woodland. That's the point. They don't bring the trees to them. That's foolish. That costs a lot of time and energy and haulage and all the rest of it. They take their tools to the trees and they make it there in the woodlands. They work in the woodlands. They're woodsmen or woods people. I wanted you to have a look at this. What am I holding here?
Manure.
Earth, manure, soil, compost. Thank you, somebody said that up there. That is what it is. Yep.
Decomposed fruit and all that.
Yeah, it is. Veg and fruit. This is not soil, this is compost. We've top dressed. By that I mean we've just laid a layer of compost that we make here onto the soil. And we've done that because what were we trying to do? Why have we put compost on the top? Any guesses? Come on, Charlotte.
Help it grow better.
Keep it dry. In fact, the reverse of it. But I know where you're going with it. Yeah.
When it rains, it puts the nutrients in the soil underneath.
Fantastic answer, Paul. Absolutely right. Yeah, it does. We grow everything that we eat in that stuff. If we're losing that stuff, what will that mean to the human race?
No food.
No food.
And it'll
The end of the
be
world.
and we'll
The end of the
die.
world. It's quite, I don't mean to be, I'm not ringing the bell yet.
How do you feel the session has gone?
Oh, I'd be very pleased. I'd be delighted to meet these people. They're really curious and and knowledgeable, and I've enjoyed the company enormously. I hope people have learnt a little bit that they might take back and speak to their family about and friends. And I don't know. I guess that the conversation going back will revolve around some of the things we talked about. So it reinforces it, doesn't it? It just cements it in people's minds, doesn't it? And I've thoroughly enjoyed spending time with them.
The group have some great ideas and theories about the best way to grow food, which they can bring back to their allotment, but they need to get their hands clean and get on with the practicalities of making their soup. But which kind of soup? That's the big question now.
Hi, I'm Leslie Lever from the Lower Kersey Young People's Group. This is part of the climate change project, and we're making 3 soups.
Tomato, minestrone and potato and leek. We've also got 3 tin soups of the same make. All the tin soups are in section A, and in section B is all a homemade soup. The young people are going to come in a moment and they're going to test it, and we'll find out which soups they enjoy the best.
Okay, so I just want to announce the results of the soup tasting, and it turns out pretty good on the homemade front, because 7 people liked mainly the tin soup, like the tinned ones, and 14 liked the homemade ones. Some interesting bits and bobs is that one person just liked all the tin soup, which I think it's probably sort of what people are used to. So there's quite a lot of sugar and salt in tin soup, so maybe people have just got accustomed to being used to those flavours. And one person said that they could really taste the sugar in the soup, and that was why they'd gone to them, because they've got quite a sweet tooth. So if you like kind of sugary things, you're maybe going to go more for tin soup. But the homemade soup came out sort of more or less double. So I think there's definitely a lot of arguments for us to make our own homemade soup and carry on doing this project, because people will like it better, apart from anything else. So thank you very much.
What are you doing?
This is the end of the tasting session of the soups. It went really well, and it proved that homemade soup came up top. We've decided to do the leek and potato soup at the end of the project, because obviously we grow the leeks and potatoes on our allotment.
It's all well and good to find out about good things happening elsewhere in places like offshoots in deepest, darkest Burnley, but the group need to find out about the things going on in Salford.
I'm just on the phone now to a chap called Ben Thomas from Start. I believe Ben does woodwork sessions up there, and I'm hoping that he'll be able to help us with our climate change project. Hi, is that Ben? Well, thank you very much, Ben. You've been very helpful. I look forward to your phone call, and I'll come up and bring a small group of young people and a camera, and we can discuss the project further. Thank you very much. Bye.
We're here at Start Salford.
Start in Salford.
And some of our young people are going to interview this gentleman here, and I'll hand over to them because they've got some questions that they're going to ask.
Start in Salford is a mental health charity, so people with long enduring mental health problems come here for a break and to kind of improve their well-being and their confidence by doing a creative activity such as artwork or woodwork. So we're a charity that is partly dependent on money from the NHS, but also from the money that generates by Start Creative, which is the project that I run.
What do you make?
What do we make? We make lots of things. My background is I'm a furniture maker, so I make traditional wooden furniture. It's actually sort of traditional Japanese style furniture, but we also build spoons, bowls, we make a lot of chopping boards, we build outdoor classrooms for schools, we build yurts, which are nomadic tents, a bit like teepees, but kind of made out of wood and canvas. We also have a kind of a ceramic department which make kind of kitchen utensils and bowls, plates, cups, but they also make sculpture as well. Then we've got a visual arts department which does paintings and sculpture, and then we've got and they also do jewellery. And then we've got a photographic department as well, which does all the kind of the photography of the artwork, and also we sell some of their sort of fine art photography that they do.
Is there any way of us getting wood which is grown in Salford?
Yes, definitely. We work with the Salford Council, and we work alongside Clifton Country Park, so we can go into Clifton Country Park and take trees from Clifton Country Park and turn them into whatever we want. So we have to kind of speak to the council about which trees are in there, because they manage a large area of ground, and we can't just walk in willy-nilly and chainsaw down a tree. We have to say, can we have this one? Or they say, those ones need taking out, and we'll take them out for them. So a lot of our wood does actually come, the wood that we work with in there, does come from Salford anyway, so yes.
Okay. How can you help us in our mission to help the environment?
Well, I think we can provide you with some wood which is grown locally. So obviously that wood hasn't travelled any distance, and timber miles is something that is quite important if we're building all our houses and all our structures and using all our building material, and it all comes from America, then obviously that's had to travel a long way, and that has huge carbon emissions in the transportation of that material. If we can also, alongside that, allow the timber to regenerate and regrow naturally, so it's on a cycle, like I've explained about the coppicing, then it can become really sustainable and actually can become carbon positive rather than carbon negative.
Do you have any other ideas for our project?
I think the idea of making a spoon or making a bowl or making this eating vessel or serving vessel something that's made from Salfordian wood by Salfordian hands, I think that really fits with what I understand the project to be.
I think we were talking about a bigger spoon, weren't we? You know, the spoon just to stir the soup.
Yeah. So rather than the eating spoons that people eat soup
you know
with.
the big spoon that you use in the soup to stir it,
Yeah.
the ones that you probably get from Thailand.
Yeah, but bigger than that.
Yeah.
That one, but that big.
Yeah. You know.
I mean, to be honest with you, we're talking about an hour and a half's work to make a big spoon.
We're gonna he's gonna give us a demonstration of making the spoon and show us around where you make the wood and carve it.
All right, folks. So we call this the assembly room, and then we've got in here the machine shop. I've got one of the tutors are teaching at the moment. So we've got two types of woodworking. You've got traditional seasoned woodworking, and you've also got green woodworking as well. Now, green woodworking is the process of working wood when it's still wet or green. So it's you work it before it dries out, and then you allow it to kind of move in certain fashions. So you're allowing for the fact that it's going to move when the moisture comes out of it. This was traditionally used in things like timber frame building, because as the joints moved and the wood dried out, the joints would lock tighter and make the whole structure stronger. We now use sort of traditional woodworking methods of working with kiln-dried timber or air-dried timber. So this would be where we process the timber in a machine shop. So that's what it comes in at. And this has been processed by a chainsaw mill. So a chainsaw is run along sideways like that, and we come up with a thick plank. So you can see there, that's the edge of the tree. So that's been in a kiln. It's probably been in the air for a year, and then it's been in a kiln, slowly sort of pushing the moisture out of it for 6 months, something like that, and we get down to something like about 10% moisture content. It's then using a variation of machines, a panel saw, a planer thicknesser, a bandsaw, a spindle moulder, turning into planed timber. So this is the difference. As you can see, much smoother. So we've taken off and we've processed this timber down. So this is an order, as I was talking about earlier, an order of oak. for a load of benches for All Tool Hall. So the main tool we agreed would work in, or the main sort of piece of equipment, is one of these fellas here, which is called a shave horse. So we use a shave horse for the process of, we have a round piece of timber in the round, like a log, and we'll split it with an axe, so we end up with these small sections. We'll then split it again until we end up with thin pieces. Now this, if we're going to do spoon carving workshop, is how we'll make our spoons. We'll start with a log, we'll split it until we have a nice sort of small section, and then we it's called a horse because you sit on it. You sit on it like this, and then we push forward with our feet, which clamps that piece of wood down. So we can then work on this piece of wood with various tools, mainly a draw knife, or we can carve in it. We can start carving out a spoon shape. So if we were working on a big spoon, we might make it in this, and we would carve them out using various hand chisels.
Hi, my name is Grace and I'm here to interview Mr Cardwell, who's the energy teacher, and Mr Rastrick, the distillation teacher. Can you tell us who you are and where you work?
Hi, I'm Mr Darren Cardwell. I work at the Albion High School. I used to be the science technician here for 10 years, then I took over as data manager and the timetabler.
Okay. Can you tell us about climate change?
Well, it's quite controversial, climate change. I mean, if you go back historically, the Earth's climate has altered drastically. Over long periods of time, it's been hot, it's been cold, it's been hot, it's been cold. I mean, now we are in a period of warming. There's no denying that. But the causes of the warming are up for a lot of debate at the moment. There's a lot of issues across the world. People are saying we're causing it. People are saying it's natural function of what's happening. Nobody really knows at the moment. But personally, I'm inclined to think that we are having an impact on the climate.
Is there a source of power which you think could be most used for us to cook a pan of soup?
If it was outside, I mean, if you're looking back across the here, I mean, wood would probably be the way to go, but you would have to look at that as a renewable source as well. Are you going to replant any wood that you used, or are you going to use fallen wood? Solar power probably wouldn't generate enough voltage to raise the temperature, enough unless your solar panel is massive. Other forms of energy collection would be quite hard to get into the soup.
Can you tell us a little bit about solar power?
Yes, it's based on what's called a photoelectric effect, where the energy from the sun is absorbed by a substance, normally silicon at the moment. It releases electrons and that generates electricity. But you need lots and lots of cells together to generate electricity. And the one thing about electricity, especially from solar cells, once it's generated, how do you store it? Do you feed it straight into the grid, or do you have to put it in batteries and use it then?
What do you think will be the power of the future?
I mean, looking ahead, I mean, fusion would be the best way to go as a source of power, but it's quite hard to initiate. I mean, there was the big cold fusion problem a while ago. Nuclear power we can probably do, but I mean, the waste from that is very dangerous and it lasts for thousands of years. The fossil fuels, they will run out in the next 100 years or so. I mean, we're going to have problems. Solar, wind, they're okay, but they do have the drawbacks. I mean, they don't generate all the time. Wave is the same as well. Geothermal could be a way to go, but there's issues with that as well. So hopefully, looking ahead, hopefully we'll make a breakthrough and fusion power would come online.
What would be the best way for us to use solar power in Salford?
That, coming from Salford myself, I know that's quite difficult. We don't have, I mean, today's an exception, but we don't have that many sunny days. If you're looking at solar power, you're looking at quite large areas to base your solar panels on. You need a lot of square footage. I mean, you could use the council houses, there's quite a few council houses in Salford, and build solar panels onto them. But, I mean, it's hard in Salford. You need large areas. You need lots of cells to generate meaningful electricity.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Rastrick and I'm Head of Science at the Albion High School, Salford.
What can you tell us about climate change?
I know that climate change is the big issue at the moment. We're teaching it to Year 8 as well as Year 10, and that it's affected mainly by pollution, carbon dioxide. They seem to think it's also the hole in the ozone layer, but it's more the other thing. It's the pollution from cars, it's the burning fuels, and we'd like to stop it by burning less fuels.
Where does the water in our taps come from?
The water in our taps has originated in the sea. It's been up into the clouds, it's fallen into rivers, it's been siphoned off into reservoirs, and then it's gone through a process of cleaning to get it clean enough to put into our taps. It's come through chlorination processes that will put bleaches in that'll kill the germs. It's allowed the sediments to settle out, and essentially then the last thing is it's a bit of fluoride put into our teeth don't fall out.
Okay. How could using water around us help with climate change?
If we're using water from around us, it means that we're not taking as much out of the ecosystem, and using water that falls around us will help us so that we're not having to put chemicals in there, we're not putting things in that are going to damage the environment, we're not having to use energy to purify the water. And in school, all the taps on the upper floor, all the water from them comes from the school roof, it comes from the clean water drains outside, so it is essentially rainwater that's fallen in Salford, but we're not allowed to use it for drinking.
Okay. Why don't we use rainwater which falls in Salford in cooking?
If we were to use it in cooking, I think the biggest issues that we would have is we're in a very, very industrialised area. We've got a lot of cars, we've got a lot of people, so there's a lot of pollution going into the air. We've got a lot of things dissolving in the rainwater, so we've got carbon dioxide. Cars will give out sulphur dioxide. Buses which are on diesel give out quite a lot of sulphur dioxide, which makes it acidic. And there could also be other chemicals that are dissolved in it that make it unsuitable for eating or drinking.
How could we purify the water using things we could buy easily or find around the house?
To purify it in terms of getting the water to look clean, it could be simply a case of pouring it through a sand trap or pouring it through a very, very thin filter made out of some sort of tissue paper. In terms of purifying it chemically, the only real way to do it is to distill the water, so to put it into some sort of container which you then heat, drive the water up a column, and when the water condenses and falls back, it's only the water that's falling back, and any of the impurities are left in the container that you started with.
Could you help us to make something to purify water?
I can certainly try. The problem that we have is that unless we're willing to use gas or we're willing to use electricity to warm the water up, the only other way to warm it up is to use a sort of convex or concave mirror that will focus the sun's rays onto your container that you can use then to boil the water, like little kids when they burn things with magnifying glasses. The issue with that is we're in Salford, and getting the sun that intense happens on about 2 days a year maybe, but we can certainly try.
Okay. How could we test that the water is suitable for humans to consume?
There are water testing kits that you can get, so people who do outward bounds things, people who are adventurers who have no way of taking enough water with them to drink, can test things like river water or stream water to see if it's pure enough for them to drink. The kits you need to buy in, and obviously they're not going to be produced in Salford. What we could look at is possibly seeing what chemicals are in them and seeing if we've got them in our store, but again, they don't originate in Salford, it might just be a little bit cheaper.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Just as a group were worrying that they would find no climate change experts, along came Ian Fothergill to tell us the science bit.
Yes, my name's Ian Fothergill. I'm a research physicist and an inventor, and my biggest interest and experience has been in energy. Climate change is a very complex thing. It's something which people tend to frown upon, but it's been absolutely essential for our survival. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. At that time, the atmospheric conditions were not able to support life. Soon after formation, there were organic materials evolved, bacteria, which were able to absorb carbon dioxide, which was the major gas on the Earth at that time. And by a process of photosynthesis, that carbon dioxide was converted into oxygen, and you get a progressive increase in the content of oxygen in the atmosphere. As oxygen increased, so life forms increased, and it was these life forms which eventually turned the atmosphere, and through various other processes, into the condition which it is, where it can support human life. We are generating too much CO2 because of our dependence on fossil fuels. There's a lot of effort which is going in to try and move from these fossil fuels, or at least accommodate them. Where you've got control of things, if you're in a household, then one of the most effective and cheapest ways of having an impact is insulation. Cavity wall insulation, if you've got cavity walls in your house, and loft insulation. Using fluorescent lighting rather than incandescent lighting, albeit they're somewhat more expensive these days, but they're getting cheaper. Not drinking bottled water. Bottled water costs about 1,000 times more per unit volume than tap water, and it is no better for you than tap water, despite all that it's advertised to be. Reusing plastic bags, because the plastic which goes into bottles and bags is derived from fossil fuels, you see. In terms of where we are today, probably the most benign fuel is wood chippings, which is about 60 times less emissive in terms of its CO2 emissions than coal, even the best coal.
There are so many things a group could do and so little time. They need to concentrate on trying out a few different things which could make a big difference. So back to Start Salford to check on the progress of our spoon and find out some simple power solutions.
We get a lot of waste material in the form of seasoned hard oak, seasoned hardwood and often greenwood when we're working green. So we recycle as much of that as possible. We recycle it in the way that we turn it into firewood. So we heat people's houses with this wood. A lot of it's come from Salford. There's some beech there that's come from Salford. So it's offcuts of greenwood that we'll burn. It's great for outdoor events as well. You can burn it in lots of different ways. One of the ways that we use here is a washing machine drum. So again, happily recycled from Salford, from the Salford tip. I've taken a washing machine, I've pulled it apart and I've taken the drum out. It's stainless steel, which is great, means it can sit outside, and the way it works really well is all these holes that are used for the washing machine to drag in the water sucks in the air, so you end up with a really hot fire in there. So if you're cooking food on it outdoors, it's great because it's protected, so you're not struggling to light the fire with all the wind blowing on it and the rain coming on it. And if you put a grill on that and put a pot on that, you can cook things really quickly. So when I'm out in the woods, I'll take that with me and I can use it to cook my lunch on or whatever. There's various other forms we can use. I mean, there's a traditional, it's called a gypsy wok, which is basically a wok. I use an old wok for a small fire. I put it on a tripod stand and you can cook and you burn fuel in that. Obviously you can have an open fire, you can just have it standing. In my house I've got a wood burning stove, so I can heat in the wood burning stove and you can put a kettle on that and that gets hot enough to boil a kettle. And of course you've got open fires, so you can just burn logs on it. So yeah, I burn all my wood at home, it heats my house, I burn which is locally sourced timber. So prior to what's going on here, I've shaped the basic part of the spoon. So we've got this basic shape of the spoon, which I've carved out. We use lime for this. So I've run this machine, run this piece of wood here through the bandsaw, and I've cut off this profile here, and I've cut off this profile here, and I've cut these profiles here, which gives us the basic shape. I've then sanded and rasped to get the rough shape. So we're now talking a kind of rough spoon at the moment. As you can see, you've got these kind of tool marks here and here, and when I feel it, it feels like a good shape, but it's still fairly rough. So what I'll do is I've rough worked it. I'm now going to work the bowl of the spoon, which is this internal piece which I've started to carve. When I carve this out, I'll then go back and sand everything so it's nice and smooth, because obviously we're working with food, so we don't want any kind of like flakes of wood getting in our food. So I'll work back that later. So I'm using this, which is it's a carving chisel. This is called a spoon gouge. It's called a spoon gouge because of that spoon shape on the end there. These come in various sweeps. This is quite a deep sweep, whereas something like that is quite a shallow sweep, so you can see the difference there. Most of the spoon I'll carve with this particular chisel. I've pre-sharpened this, as you can see on the back. It's got a mirror back finish, which I use on a polishing mop, and it just means that it slides very well. And so you can actually, rather than smacking it with a hammer, you can literally carve. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure on that, I'm just scooping out. And you're sort of scooping, a bit like digging a hole really. So all I'm doing is working my way back along. Now what I'm doing is I'm coming across the grain. We've got the grain structure, the wood runs like this. So what I'm doing is I'm going across the grain. Now it's, when you're planing wood and cutting wood, you plane with the grain and you sand with the grain. But when you're chiselling, what happens is, when you're gouging out a spoon, if you go with the grain, which I'll show you, it wants to follow the grain, the chisel. So you end up digging in and you get this rough patch. So you cut across the grain. You can only do that with a really sharp chisel. When I'm carving spoons, I kind of pretty much let the spoon dictate how it's going to be. So I've got kind of an idea that we wanted a big long spoon and I wanted a big chunky handle on the end. But the overall sort of feel of it will happen as I kind of like, as I get my hands on the wood and sort of feel what the wood wants to do, really.
Okay, so we went to Start Salford and we asked Ben to whittle us a spoon. And obviously it's not a spoon for like just eating your soup with because it's huge, but it's basically for stirring the soup. And if you have a little look at it, it's got made in Salford as well down the side. So, and it's made from wood which has been found and grown in Salford, so it's completely made in Salford spoon.
The group got together at some more workshops. One of the biggest debates was over the name of the soup. Eventually, everyone settled on Leakable Likeable. The best way to sell the soup seemed to be at community events. That way we could cut down on packaging and get together with others to talk about why our soup was better than your run-of-the-mill tin stuff. But no matter how much you want to cut down on waste, you can't give folks soup in their hands. So the group came up with another solution.
Yeah, I think walking round now, looking at the crops and the beds, I think we're going to be all right. And in fact, later on this year, we can still even grow some more fruit and veg.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say I feel really bad about going up to offshoot season all that carbon, so I would like to plant a small tree if that's alright with you as part of my role in this climate change project.
Yeah, that's fine if you want to do that. Have you actually brought the tree with you?
Yeah, it's just over there.
Right. Well, I've got over there as well. I've got a very small bed, which we can only plant it in, actually. Plant it in there.
With all this new knowledge, the group decided to get together with some local residents to have a heated debate on climate change, to tell them what they were up to and let them see what life was like on the Kersal Vale allotments.
What we're doing now, we'll have a casual discussion about climate change. As you can see, we've got so many adults on each table, and we're just going to find out really, in a casual way, what people really know. And we're going to go over now and do a bit of filming. What do you think about climate change? Do you believe it?
Oh, I definitely believe it.
Well, it's not a myth.
It's just that they say all plastics are recyclable. Well, when we put things in the recycle bin, there's certain things they won't take, which is plastic. It's stuff like that I don't understand. If everything's supposed to be recyclable, how come you have to take things like bottle tops off and certain packaging? It has to go in normal ways, which is, to me, it's just going to increase landfill. What they're trying to prevent.
Personally, I've not got a view either way, really, but I was listening to a programme on BBC Radio 4 a few months ago, and there was professors on there. I think, personally, there's a lot of people earning a lot of money out of frightening everybody in the world about this climate change, because there's several professors on this programme were saying that in the 1970s, the water level rose. Every so many years, the water levels rise and fall. It's been happening for the last 500 years, apparently. I don't know whether it has or whether it hasn't, but that's what he was saying.
Yeah, I believe in it, yeah, because I think all the recycling is really good, because it's the young ones growing up. We've got to think about them. You know, you can't keep mining all the time and chopping trees down and recycling all the papers is really good.
I definitely believe in it. We've got to do something now for the next generations that's coming up. Because if we don't take responsibility of what we're doing now, the life for our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren is going to be really bad. I mean, it's not going to be anything like we know. They could end up getting water from miles away because they don't have water on tap because everything's dried up.
Right, we're going to allotment. See you in a bit. We're going to have a tour in the allotment. We're going to have a tour in the allotments to see like how you can grow stuff and stuff.
Just to explain what an allotment is, it's a plot of land. And a British standard allotment is 30 metres long, that's from that fence to the path, and it's 10 metres wide. That's from that path to that path. Now it's calculated that this, round about 1900, can support a man and wife and his family for 9 months of the year. So that's how much production you should get out of a plot. Now things have gone on from about 1908 when the allotments were first established, and they amended the laws around about 1950. Now this enshrines the right that people can have the right to dig and produce their own vegetables. We applied for this greenhouse because it was going to be demolished at Bewell Park. We got permission to dismantle it and fetch it down here, and this plot is actually in the control of the association. We pay the rent for it, and what we do, we've adapted this greenhouse for people with wheelchair users. As you can see, they've started off on that bed there, onions. I think we've got a few cauliflowers over there. Down there you'll see there's a solar panel, and behind in that box is 2 batteries. And the idea is, what happens is that the sun shines on the solar panel and this charges up the batteries. And in turn, what we've done is wide it into pumps on either side, and the containers outside where we collect the water from this big area is the hose pipe, so they can use that.
So all we have to do is you just come up, pull the hose pipe out, and just switch the switch on.
Well, the future for the group, obviously we've been very impressed with this project, and hopefully as a group we can continue to help the climate change by obviously working our own allotment and growing our own fruit and veg. In the building that we're based, we can still recycle materials and stuff like that. But obviously if there's any more projects, this has been a stepping stone for our group, so hopefully any more projects as a group we'd like to get involved. And I think obviously because you do the cooking and stuff like that, you're teaching young people about the fruit and veg that we grow.
Yeah, I love to grow fruit and veg and then take it back to St Aidan's and physically cook it with the young people. And I think it's important to get the children young.
Yeah, I think it's very important to get them young. I think when I was a young lad, obviously we didn't know anything about climate change, and I think climate change has come into the topic of the last maybe 10, 15 years, and more people are finding out about the climate change. But I think it's very important that we're getting very, very young, you know, getting them doing stuff like helping out on allotments, watering plants, recycling. They may not know why they're doing it, but when they get older, you can explain why they're doing it and giving them more tasks and jobs to do. But I think it's very important to teach them when they're very young, and that's down to the parents. So if the parents are teaching them very young, when they do get to an age where they understand more about climate change, they personally then might be able to do something about it themselves. So, yeah. Looking good if everybody else jumps on board.
And as well, you're going to get another recycle bin, and it's going to be for wasted food, because there is a lot of food that is not eaten. I mean, you can make so many meals with scraps of food.
So really the future's looking really bright, and I just hope you know, get these young people or these children while they're young and start educating them now.
Bye bye.